He's a politician, but he's not just any politician. His biography is what you'd expect from the protagonist of a best-selling political fiction novel. However, dear viewer, this is a flesh and blood politician with both a good side and a dark side. We're talking about Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister and the most powerful politician the country has had in the last 2 decades.
This is a country that works. People work, they invent things that change life.
This is past, this is future.
Yes, okay, perfect.
I found in the times that I've been in government that the most rapid technology transfers occur when businesses operate with each other. Israel is often called the startup nation. I call it the innovation nation. The future belongs to those who innovate. Those who don't innovate, whether in companies or in countries, will fall behind. Innovation is the only way to consistently add value to your products and services in an increasingly competitive global economy.
But you may be wondering, why are we talking about Netanyahu today? Why is he so important? Well, folks, what if I told you that this man was the architect who basically designed the Israel that we know today? Yes, you heard that right. We're talking about a politician who has so much character that he actually attacked the very president of the United States in front of his own Congress. Yes, indeed, this happened to Barack Obama. So don't tell me that this guy isn't tough. Well, the fact is that Benjamin Netanyahu, or Bibi as he's known in Israel, has done practically everything in his country. During his time as a soldier, and remember here that military service is mandatory in Israel, he commanded a special forces unit, and he participated in plenty of operations which have names like you'd see in a Hollywood movie. Names like Operation Inferno and Operation Isotope, where, by the way, Netanyahu was shot while his unit rescued a plane hijacked by the terrorist group, the Black September Organization.
Look, I'm 28 years old. I've had to defend my country in 2 wars and in many battles.
And by the way, here's some curious trivia. In 1973, when the Yom Kippur War broke out between Israel and its Arab neighbors, Netanyahu, who was studying in Boston, returned home to rejoin the special forces until the war ended. But moving on from trivia, let's continue. The fact is that after studying in the United States and spending some time working in consulting, he got involved in politics, where again, he's done everything. He has been a member of parliament, an ambassador to the UN, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Finance, and of course, Prime Minister for 4 terms. In fact, my friends, he's about to become the Israeli Prime Minister with the longest time in office. However, now his position of influence and power is being questioned. So let's take a look at what is happening and why this man is an election-winning machine.
Cornered.
On February the 12th, 2018, after a year of investigations, the Israeli police recommended the Attorney General bring charges against Benjamin Netanyahu. You see, the police state there are clear indications of corruption, bribes, and influence peddling. They accused the Prime Minister of having received gifts of hundreds of thousands of dollars, of having conspired to influence the media, and also of having protected millionaire corruption in the multi-million-dollar process of buying German submarines. And you know what? This isn't the first time that Israel's police have accused him. They also did it in 1997 and again in 1999 during Netanyahu's first term as Prime Minister. Back then, the accusations ended with no charges. And now, again, the Prime Minister has made it very clear that he will not yield. Netanyahu might not be the most popular guy on the planet, but one thing is absolutely certain. Every time Bibi has come to power, he's done so under very, very difficult conditions. During his first term, when he came to power in 1996, the country was greatly unbalanced, with an uncontrolled public deficit and growing external debt. In 2003, when he was appointed Minister of Finance under Ariel Sharon's government, the country was undergoing its worst recession. And the most current time was in 2009, just when his country was suffering the consequences of the great international financial crisis. Well, in all these cases, Netanyahu's recipes, they worked. And not only that, with his policies, Bibi has transformed this country's identity. Thanks largely to his governance, Israel has gone from being a place with chronic imbalances and crises, a country that in 1984 had to be rescued by the United States, to becoming a prosperous country with well-organized accounts and a worldwide power in technology and innovation. Through all this, we can understand how, despite all the controversy, Bibi continues to raise passions, some against him, but many in favor of him. But many of you might now be thinking, okay, but what were, or rather, what are Benjamin Netanyahu's recipes? Well, that's exactly what we're going to look at next. Traditionally, Israel was a socialist country with high taxes, a lot of regulation, and a very large government. Well, Bibi's mission was to change this model once and for all and enforce another that would organize the accounts and improve the country's competitiveness. I mean, check this out.
You think that mathematicians and computer engineers or mechanical engineers or doctors are first? They're very important, but they're not first. They're second. There was a country that had the best mathematicians, the best physicists, the best metallurgists in the world, but that country was very poor. It was called the Soviet Union. What comes first is markets. This was the main thing that I tried to bring to the Israeli economy in my own way. Benjamin Netanyahu.
With this idea in mind, in his first mandate in 1996, his #1 priority was to reduce the public deficit, privatize banks and large government-owned companies, and suppress capital controls. For example, at that time, Israelis had a restriction on the money that they could take out of the country and use for buying foreign currency. Yes, we could say that the Israel of the 90s resembled Kirchner's Argentina, a lot of public spending and capital controls. But let's continue. In 2003, when the country was undergoing a terrible crisis, as Minister of Finance, a Minister of Finance with a lot of power by the way, Netanyahu froze public spending and launched a huge tax reduction. For example, he reduced corporate income tax as well as individual income tax by half. See, when he arrived at the ministry, the maximum rate on income in terms of wages was 64%. When he left, it was 44%, a 20-point reduction in just 2 years. And when he came to power in 2009, he had a similar recipe: less public spending, fewer taxes, and less bureaucracy. In addition, in recent years, he managed to get Israel, once and for all, to exploit its huge natural gas reserves.
Israel bolsters Egypt ties with $15 billion gas deal.
It was precisely because of this that many believe Israel's miracle would not have been possible without this prime minister. But don't think that he has only had good results in the economic sector. Not at all.
In the 37 months that Netanyahu held office, Israeli citizens enjoyed one of the safest and quietest periods with regards to terrorism. Of the 5 Israeli leaders examined, Rabin, Peres, Netanyahu, Barak, Sharon, Netanyahu's policies with regards to the prevention and deterrence of terrorism were the most effective.
Indeed, in addition to the economy, Israeli society recognizes Netanyahu as having made Israel a safer country. A safer country, and also, very importantly, a country that is much more open to the world. So much so that this prime minister has succeeded, and listen up here because I think this will amaze you, in getting relations between Israel and the Arab countries to go, well, smoothly. And this is something that we certainly need to dive more into, and we'll do that right now.
The external approach.
So you probably know the popular saying, my enemy's enemy is my friend. Well, it looks as if something like this is happening in the Middle East, with Iran and with fundamentalist groups like ISIS. I mean, check out the news that the New York Times published on February the 3rd, 2018.
Secret alliance. Israel carries out airstrikes in Egypt with Cairo's okay.
Pay close attention to this news bomb. In the last 2 years, Israel has carried out more than 100 aerial attacks with planes, helicopters and drones against fundamentalist groups in Egypt, particularly against the so-called Islamic State of Sinai. That is, an Arab government, in this case the Egyptian government, has authorized Israel to carry out attacks and operations within its territory, which is really quite amazing. But that's not all. Israel's relations with Jordan and Egypt are better than ever, but they're also growing stronger with other Arab countries, including Saudi Arabia. Yep, you heard that right. Now, they still aren't formal, but they are happening behind closed doors.
There is an alignment of Israel and other countries in the Middle East that would have been unimaginable 10 years ago. Certainly in my lifetime, I never saw anything like it, and I'm at the age of the State of Israel, more or less, so it's an extraordinary thing.
So how about another example? Well, after 70 years of prohibition, and for the first time, Saudi Arabia has authorized an Israeli commercial flight to cross its airspace. Since March, Air India flights between New Delhi and Tel Aviv will cross Saudi airspace. This might seem like a small step, but it's really not. And you know what? It's not just the Arab countries. The Prime Minister has set his sights on the East and has also established surprisingly good relations with India, Australia, Singapore, and even China.
We are very much excited by the Belt and Road Initiative, and what we seek is merely an express lane in this Belt and Road that is called China-Israel relations.
And what's more, Netanyahu led the first visit of an Israeli prime minister to Latin America. In 2017, he visited Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina. And in Africa, well, it's more of the same.
Israel is coming back to Africa, and Africa is coming back to Israel.
In fact, Netanyahu is the first Israeli leader to visit this continent since the 1960s, and many African leaders are delighted with Israel's money and Israel's technology.
I saw diversity and richness. I saw passion and productivity. I saw young African entrepreneurs who were building companies harnessing the power of the digital age. Africans are seizing the future. Israel wants to seize this future with you.
In short, as you can see, both in the economic field as well as in security and foreign policy, this Prime Minister has many reasons to be proud.